Hello and welcome to another episode of Film Spill, a movie night podcast. I'm your host, Chelsea. Film Spill, if you already don't know, is a podcast that comes out every week, and we talk about a movie by a female filmmaker every episode. We also discuss women in the entertainment industry in general. We play slumber party type games, spill entertainment gossip, and get to know each other and our guest. This week, I am doing a solo episode. I apologize if last week the audio was not the greatest. I'm testing out to see which setup works best and where I could be, doing the podcast. And unfortunately, my walls are really paper thin, so our neighbors can hear us, and I don't want to disturb the peace. So sometimes, or some weeks, I might be at a lower volume depending the time of day that I'm recording. I try to be very consistent with when I record these episodes, but sometimes things get in the way of my schedule, so bear with me. I hope that this week the audio is back to normal and we have no issues moving forward. But anyway, I have a glass of wine this week with me. I should start incorporating just a wine of the week, but I feel like so many other podcasts do that, so I'm not. But I will mention that I did pour myself a nice red wine. I don't know which one it is exactly. It was a gift given to my fiance. It was like a hand-me-down gift. Her brother got it as a gift, and then he gave it to my fiance, and then now it's mine. So this week, I'm going to be talking about Anna Biller's horror comedy film, The Love Witch 2006. But first, it's time for Name That Episode. This week's Women Television Director shout-out goes to Vanessa Perez, who directed a total of 4 episodes of Firefly Lane, Season 1, Episode 5 and 6, and Season 2, Episode 5 and 6. Firefly Lane was created by Maggie Friedman, who has also written 19 episodes for the show. Firefly Lane is available to watch on Netflix. If you haven't watched the show, it's actually, I think, trending still right now on Netflix. But if you don't know what it's about, the show is about 2 friends named Tully and Kate who support each other through good times and bad with an unbreakable bond that carries them from their teens to their 40s. And this show is a lot of flashbacks in between their early middle school days to when they were in college and just their career after college and to their current day, which is their 40s. So originally it takes place in the 70s, I believe, and then it goes to present day. So their present day is 2004, but I know that when the new season comes out, it's going to take place in the current age, as in 2023. So they're going to add, I believe, another flashback realm. I don't know, don't quote me on that, but I could be completely wrong. I saw in the trailer that they're going to incorporate 10 years later, which is 2023. Vanessa Perez, hopefully I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, but she's directed for other shows like The Good Doctor, The Flash, Runaways, The Resident, Chicago Med, Charmed, and so much more. She seems to be a force to be reckoned with in the television space and seems to dedicate most of her time directing for television instead of directing for film, which nothing's wrong with that. We all have our preferences. Some people prefer to direct mostly for television and vice versa. Some people prefer to direct mostly for film. I don't know which one I would mostly like to do. Both sound very interesting to do, and I love either or. I love TV and I love film. And I feel like with streaming now, it's made television so different than what it was before. And I am such a geek when it comes to reality TV. I watch so much reality TV cooking shows, and I will prefer to put on a show than put on a movie. Not to say that I don't love film though. I love film. It's just TV's always been my go-to since I was a little girl. But movies I used to watch all the time too. So I don't know. It's a hard mix. But but the first thing I'm going to be directing, or the first thing I ever directed, was film. So I feel like film has always had my heart in that way. But So this week, because I am doing this episode by myself, there's not going to be a slumber party type game, and I'm just going to dive right into the film. So, like I stated before, this week we're going to be talking about The Love Witch 2016. The Love Witch is available to watch for free on Tubi TV, Peacock and Redbox, so there is no excuse that you don't go out and watch this film either right before or after hearing the podcast. Hopefully this podcast has helped encourage you to go see the film. But this discussion will contain spoilers for the film, so if you haven't seen it, go watch and then come back afterwards to hear my thoughts. This was the first time that I actually watched The Love Witch. I heard about the film through another friend of mine. Shout out, I think it was you, Aspen, who's another producer for Onyx. I think they were telling me how they used The Love Witch for some inspiration in their upcoming short, Killer Puss, which I will have them on my next podcast episode, which we will be discussing another film together, so stay tuned for that. But this film is about a modern day witch who uses spell and magic to get men to fall in love with her with deadly consequences. The director, writer, producer, and editor for the film is Anna Billard, who went to UCLA and got her bachelor's degree in art. And she also got an MFA in art and film from Cal Arts. Her first feature film, Viva, gained cult status after being played at film festivals globally. Her second feature, The Love Witch, won acclaim for her visual and feminist themes. In 2017, she won the Trailblazer Award and Best Costume Design at the Chicago Independent Film Critics Circle Awards for The Love Witch. In 2019, she was invited to join the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. She is listed in a Rotten Tomatoes article as one of, quote, the 21 masters of horror shaping the genre right now. The basis of her work strives to combine cinema with authentic experience, specifically the day-to-day life of a woman. Her initial work as a filmmaker focused on creating cinema on visual pleasure for women. Rotten Tomatoes has listed the feature as the number 40 horror film of all time. Success of the film comes from mixing so many genres and styles. Biller states that her reference to this film is Gertrude, directed by Cal Theodore Dreyer. The film was made in 1964, and also Leave Her to Heaven, directed by John M. Stale, 1945. A lot of these references focus their films on women being trapped by domestic duties. Biller has talked about engaging in feminist history of film itself. She was asked what advice she would give to first-time directors, and it's to make a film that you really want to make. She talks about wanting to change how horror film is written out to be, and it's not in the perception of the killer's point of view, and that's what started to really change the game. Like movies like Psycho, who focus more on the character development. I feel like there's another show that's successful in doing so, Dexter, that if you guys haven't watched the TV series, Dexter mainly focuses on, he's pretty much like a serial killer, but you sympathize with this character because he goes out and he kills bad guys, people who deserve it. So although his actions aren't correct, audiences sympathize with him because he is, quote unquote, killing off the bad guys. Instead of having horror film not told in that perspective, our movies don't stand out. And I think that's why so many horror films kind of slip right under the rug, because audiences can't connect with them. For example, Anna Billard, she wanted to take her new feature film, Blue Beard, and she wanted to take it from the female point of view and to make sure that she creates a character that you care about. She does say that she is a fan of Hitchcock, and the more she learns about him, the more that she sees how intelligent he is about character creating and the relationships, and how observant he is with female and male relationship, and the way that he writes about them and how he connects with them. Oh, she talks highly about Hitchcock. Fun fact, both her parents were in art and design. She says that that's what helped her get into art and design, because she was surrounded by it. Her mom used to make everything like everything, as in like the little things as well. Like she says she made a bed before. They would never buy things, they would just make things. So she found the art of just using things that she already owned, already had, and just creating more art out of them. I feel like that's a skill to have, is being able to like reuse and recycle what you already have. I know that I try to do that, and sometimes I am not very successful. So on behalf of just like production design and costuming and just designing for this whole movie, Anna Biller did costume design and set design. The costuming and just the set, the tone is very retro. We get vibrant colors, but in a very like pastel way. Like you do feel like you're watching a movie from the 60s and not made in 2016, but it's just very visually appealing. Each frame is so picture perfect, and there's a lot of attention to detail when it comes to set design and just what is a part of curating the character and the vibe of the movie. Especially when we are in Elaine's home, we see a lot of what you would have in your household as a witch. So we have herbs, we have potions and bottles. So Anna Billard made the majority of wardrobe, including all of the Renaissance costumes. She made a lot of the other props like the pentagon, hooked rug, the altar, the spell books, and many of the paintings, which when you see Elaine already painting on the paintings, they're pretty much done. So that's just amazing to see like how much talent she has. And who knows, maybe her parents actually helped her do some of these set designs, or she's just very creative, because there was a lot of attention to details even in the small things to make sure that the scene was set up. While location scouting, she would redesign the sets based on the new locations. She created a set that visually was a woman's environment, which speaks to the male gaze, focused on the color palette and making sure that the colors corresponded with one another. So in the very beginning of the film, in the opening credits, we see Elaine driving this bright red Mustang. And she has her blue eyeshadow and a bright red dress. The credits are red, and there's a blue rope in the beginning of the credits as well. So there's binding involved, which has to do with just witchcraft and the practice of witchcraft that partakes in this film. There is candle magic involved, and there's herb magic. So diving in deep in just witchcraft is displayed in a more modern time. There isn't, like, you're not going to see a floating car or a floating book. Like, it's just a modern practice of witchcraft. Now, I am a practicing witch myself. I'm an eclectic witch, so that means that I just take I take my own practice. How I look at it is that I take a little bit of everything. So whatever resonates with me. I have practiced candle magic in the past. I still do practice candle magic as well as herb magic. And here, Elaine is doing both. She's doing candle magic and she's using herbs as well. Her supply of herbs is incredible, and she is a daily practicing witch. Everyone practices witchcraft differently. I can't speak for every witch, but if you are interested in learning witchcrafts and just like different practices that there are out there, I would highly recommend YouTube. There's a bunch of other witches out there who, if you're interested in herb magic, like what types of herbs you can use, and if you're interested in candle magic, what candles resonate with what you want. Speaking on behalf of witchcraft, there's a quote in like kind of probably like 20 minutes into the film where Elaine is sitting in a park and she talks about being asked why she practices witchcraft. And it's not to do magic, but it's also to alternate energy and being able to change the outcome of certain things based on the energy that you provide. So she says, using your will to get what you want. That is one of the quotes that's part of one of the quotes that she says on behalf of talking about witchcraft. And it is, like I said, alternating energy to work in your favor. So it's not, you can call it magic, but it's your ability to be able to have that outcome. And if you think about it, it's kind of like manifestation. So I know that like people write in journals and they have a repeated mantra that they say, or maybe they have a daily gratification where they give thanks in their journals or whatever the case may be. So like I feel like everyone kind of does some sort of practice of witchcraft, but not everyone can claim to be practicing witch. So I feel like there's so much stuff to learn in witchcraft, and there's so much that you can do. If you're interested in learning about that, about witchcraft at all, I would highly recommend like Googling or just YouTubing, reading books. That's another great advice that I've heard throughout like podcasts and YouTube videos that I've watched myself, is that there's a lot of books out there, and a lot of books out there have really good information. So for the cinematography for this film, Anna Billard worked with M. David Mullen. They've previously worked together, and they are a fan of classic movies. It was reminiscent of cult classic horror films. There is a strong visual style that is a representation of visual fantasies. Emphasis on lighting, subject to stand out from background, create depth, and present female characters as glamorous. Anna Billard also composed and recorded music herself. The editing was strong attention on facial features. There was a point where there's some voiceovers that are done when we have Elaine talking about trash talking the guy that she just put a love spell on. Samantha Robertson, who plays Elaine, spent a year with Anna constructing the character through studying psychology, watching old movies, and attending rituals. Samantha Robertson internalized narcissism Elaine is meant to have while simultaneously portraying the externalized acting of old movie divas. Anna wanted to explore female fantasy through the lens of a witch because the architect attached to that. It was simultaneously about men's fears and women's fantasies. So what would happen in this film is that Elaine would create some sort of spell bottle and give it to the men that she wanted to seduce. So the first man that she seduced was a professor, and when she gave him this drink, he started to hallucinate. And this is one of the most like cinematographic appealing scenes. I mean, there was a lot throughout the film, but this is like one of my top. It was this one and the other scene where she's sitting eating lunch with Trish, and it's very pink. It's like a bubblegum pink all around. But this is when she's seducing him, and it looks like you're looking through one of those like kaleidoscope things like as a kid, and you feel like you're tripping out with him as well, but in such a different way that I haven't seen captured on camera in like a really long time. I've seen it before, but I forget what movie I can reference to that specifically. But it's very like, it gets me tripped up as well. And she like opens up her coat and there's rainbow, and you feel like you're like being blinded as well, which is very like smartly thought out. It's very, very clever how she approached each scene, and each scene was so different from the other. The first victim was the professor, and then we have the second victim, who is Trish's husband, and Elaine gets a hold of him and starts seducing him, and he starts blurting out his true feelings and how he feels towards the relationship that he has with Trish. And he talks about how Trish reacts to him when he has some things to say, and when he's already spellcasted and goes home back to Trish, their relationship, you can see that it's very much where the woman keeps quiet and the man has everything to say, and she doesn't question him on when he's already acting sus, and he clearly had an affair and was cheating on her. No, obviously now he's put into a love spell, and she can't really much question him because she feels, or it's back to those stereotypes where a woman doesn't have a voice or can't say much and is over dominated by the man. but then you see him as a coward and him being or starting to get eaten up by this desperate love that has for Elaine. And each man that she casts this spell, they start deteriorating by just, I guess, their desperation, how much they're just really not what they make themselves up to be. Anna has been quoted on the messaging behind the film: "For myself, I get pleasure in watching movies with a narcissistic gaze. There's one reason I make movies: to create that gaze on screen, the gaze of the woman in the mirror. The idea that women have to cater to men to survive is very real." And speaking on the narcissistic gaze, it focuses on the way female characters view themselves as sexy and powerful, and how some would view that as a trained self-objectification. The inherent nature of men is not strong, resilient, and dependable identity that has been historically favored by mainstream content, but rather a childlike existence so fragile that any refusal of their despairs or assertion of power by women would shatter their reality, thus disabling their ability to love. Female fantasies do not exist outside the influence of the male gaze, the love which rather focuses on how women's idea of self and relationships, though their own, become twisted and mutated by the normalization, stereotypical gender roles, and desires of cisgendered heterosexual men. This all sets the groundwork for the warped and misguided actions Elaine is more than willing to take, whether it be to drug a man so that he embraces her, or conduct a witch bottle so that a deceased lover may always have a piece of her, if they bring her one step closer to finding the man of her psychedelic dreams. Elaine's use of her body and sex magic as a sort of toxin to ensnare and bewitch man, coupled with her belief that it will result in true everlasting love, can be recognized as another case of the successful patriarchal brainwashing of a receptive woman. So in an interview, Billard has quoted that people have historically made witch bottles using their urine, hair, and also herb, nails, pins, and things to scare away spirits. That's an ancient practice. Elaine began by pouring her own urine into a clear glass bottle, followed by a bloody used tampon, unnamed herbs, and hardware nails. She corked the bottle and proceeded to wheel her lover's dead body outside, dig a hole, and bury him, all while the audience listens to her narrate thoughts on her comfortability and familiarity with the death of those she has loved. There is a midsummer festival part in the film where she has gotten the love of this detective, right? Which is her last lover that we see. She cast the love spell to. And this really reminded me like Midsummer, the film produced by A24. And I feel like a lot of more things are being referenced to like a Midsummer festival, which was really intriguing to see that I keep seeing these scenes pop out. And I'm like, all right, are we like, is everyone having this vibe where we are Quentin Tarantinoing things and we are using old movie references? But yeah, there was, I think the only movie reference that she really was using here was the close-up shots, like in Psycho, where we have Anna Billard, where we have Elaine talking to the camera as if she's mocking us, and we're hearing her voiceover about her thoughts. I feel like that was her own real reference to an older genre, but I'm not saying that like I think that's her only reference visually. And I think also she used like certain concepts and tones, obviously from, films from the 60s. In terms of references, I think that she used themes that were used in films that aren't really talked about. She referenced a lot of movies from like the 1940s into like the 1960s. No, but pretty much mostly on like 1940s films that had to do with women. Overall, it can be said that Anna Billard really focused a lot of time creating this film and really just cherished making this film. As for her advice, obviously you should make a movie that you really care about, and she took that into consideration. And on behalf of like talking about why she did take on all these roles, she has spoken about just confrontation when it comes to having men on her set and saying no to men, and just the backlash that she's gotten from that. So she ends up taking on a lot of responsibility of her own, and that could also explain why she took on so many roles, but also to create a film that truly is what you want and how you envision it is to do it all yourself. And that takes a lot of work, and she took on a lot of responsibility. So kudos to her. She definitely deserves the recognition for this film. Even though it might not be a film for everyone, it might not be everyone's favorite film, it is a visually beautifully shot film. Yeah, like it just goes to show that if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything and everything. And it just motivates me as a filmmaker to be a jack of all trades and to do everything myself. Not saying that in a bad way, like do everything yourself, but also like you could do it. If you really want to finish your movie and you can't find someone to take on the role, just take it on yourself and make your film. And that concludes this week's discussion. Thank you for listening. This has been Film Spill, a movie night podcast. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest. All are at Film Spill Pod. Tell a friend about the podcast if you like, and leave us a review on Apple Podcast. That will help other people find Film Spill as well. Special thanks to Onyx Films for promoting us. You can check out Onyx's other projects at onyx-films.com. Until next time, don't cry over a spilled film. Spilled film. Spilled film.